Nothing has really changed my industry like marijuana has. The biggest difference is the potency. And that's really where, like, it's the wild, wild west. The increase in overdose in kids just eating cookies and brownies that their parents bought and they didn't know weren't safe is off the charts. You think, well, people are going to use one or the other? No. People that used to just drink will now drink and smoke. Between 1 and 3 teenagers who smoke marijuana smoke it every day. What did increase 92% the fatalities on the highways was the opening of the retail stores. And so that's where we're going in Virginia. After marijuana was legalized, within 2 years, you see a 7.7% increase in your workers' comp claims. I can't tell you how many people have said, like, if I can't smoke weed and work here, I'm not working here. He didn't swallow it. He held it in his mouth, which is probably worse. And it was someone else's pee. The actual smoking of the flower might be the worst way because it's just, you get all the carcinogens and stuff. I hope that we can get our lawmakers to understand the importance of keeping the potency down.
Welcome to another edition of No Holds Barred. I'm Rich Roth, and before I introduce my guest today, I want to take a second to refresh everyone's memory on our relationship and partnership with Moore and Giles. They've been proudly calling Lynchburg home for the past 90 years, where they craft premium leather bags, accessories, furniture, home goods, and leather for both residential and commercial interiors. Their products are designed with heirloom craftsmanship and made to last for generations. Moore and Giles committed to supporting the Lynchburg community through local partnerships, events, and organizations. Explore their collections at mooreandgiles.com. And now my guest here today, Ryan Gordon from Blue Ridge Scientific. Welcome back. You were here for the April Fool's edition.
Yes.
A little more serious topic.
We're telling the truth today. Not trying to fool anybody.
A little more serious topic, but
yes, sir.
And we're going to dive into cannabis, right? The laws are changing. Everything is changing about this plant, this drug, this, whatever we want to call it, the impact it's having on society, the way it's viewed now versus the way it was. God, I hate to say when we were kids, because that makes us sound and feel really old. But I mean, it used to be like, this big hidden secret and, kids are buying it at school and it's low quality. And I mean, half the time it was oregano, right? I mean, they didn't even know what they were getting. And I mean, it's just evolved so much over the past couple of decades. And
nothing has impacted my industry more than marijuana and just the evolution of it from, just like you said, seeds and stems and grass and whatever where they were selling people, right. When we were younger. But now it's far more advanced and, commercially made. And, we're getting ready for that market to open up, and next year here retail stores are going to open up. So lots of change for sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I figured it was a good idea. I know you've talked about it on the morning line a little bit and, they've dove into it, from time to time, but, thought we could, take a deeper dive now and really, learn some of the facts versus some of the fiction, how it's evolving, how parents should approach it, how, the impact it could have on younger people, but also, how it's impacting the workplace. And I mean, at Blue Ridge Scientific, you obviously do a lot of testing, but you've been working with us for almost a couple of decades now. And I mean, you give talks to different organizations, the local SHRM. I mean, give people a little bit of your background and expertise and experience with it.
Yeah, so I've been in the drug and alcohol testing world now for about 15 years, in the medical field for about 25. And really, again, nothing has really changed my industry like marijuana has. I mean, really, it's been unbelievable. But I will travel regularly. I mean, I have hundreds of clients here locally, and I'll travel regularly to on-site and educate people on reasonable suspicion and how now the legalization of marijuana is impacting, employer policies. But I regularly have parents come in as well and say, hey, we want to test our kid because there are vape pens and all of this stuff, the accessibility of it in schools, and they're worried. They're worried about their kids. I mean, and so it definitely has become top of mind in everything that we do, especially when it comes to advising, employers on their policies, whether you test, everyone the same as you do safety sensitive, and all the different things that go into that. So you're seeing employers have to adjust, and families are too, because it is becoming more and more, I guess, accepted, because it used to be really taboo.
Yeah. And I mean, let's talk about the evolution of it. And again, just looking back to, when we were in high school and college, and I know a lot of people our age may have experimented back then, but, then you join the workforce, the professional world, and you don't deal with that. And, now you may be sitting there going, what is this? There are different strains and the more I've dug into it, it's the, what is it? The indica versus the sativa, and they're supposed to have different effects. And then each little strain has different characteristics. I mean, it almost, the more I dove into it, looked like shopping for bourbon with all these, different things. Like,
unfortunately, you're right.
Are they all that different, or, are these just subtle little differences that,
I think you nailed it, though. It really comes down to the biggest difference is the potency. And that's really where, it's the wild, wild west. Because if you think back when we were younger, the THC in the flower, they call it, when we were young, was about 4% THC. A lot of CBD in there as well. And now you're seeing in the flower itself, like the same type, that people are growing and selling, on the black market is between 15 and 25%.
Wow.
Compared to 4%. So a lot stronger. And then when you get into the concentrates, you're looking at 60 to 90%. So the example that I think best suits our generation is beer, wine, and grain. If you've ever drank grain alcohol, that is what we're dealing with, as far as concentrates are concerned with marijuana. So if beer has a 5%, potency, wine's 12%, and grain's 90%, you've got similar with the marijuana today. And so a lot stronger. And when you get into the legalization and the retail stores that we expect next year, that's where the concern really is because they're, like I said, it's kind of the wild, wild west, even though we're making it legal. Me personally, I'm not in favor of it, but we are rushing to it. We're rushing to it without putting some parameters in place, specifically when it comes to the concentrated.
Let's talk a little bit about, you're talking about concentrate and vapes and, different ways to consume it now rather than, back in the day, it was like, were you rolling a joint or the dudes who had the water bongs, Cheech and Chong stuff.
I've seen a 6-foot water bong at college, literally they're on the top bunk with this thing, like crazy. I was like, what in the world is that?
But it's like, those were kind of the differences, or maybe you mash it up and put it in like brownies or something. But now you're dealing with vapes and you're dealing with edibles, and you talked about concentrates. I mean, talk a little bit about some of the differences in ways people that, or in ways that people use it now or consume it.
So interesting is that that's a big deal as well, because people still are going to smoke it. It's just how it's going to be. You're going to buy it. Even if you buy it in a retail store, you can buy it to where you can smoke it. And that's one of the worst ways, really, because you get all of the extra stuff going into your lungs. And again, I'm not in favor, but there are better ways to use it than smoking it. They have these, dry herb vaporizers now, I guess is the safest way to use it, because you are able to eliminate a lot of the, carcinogens that you get from smoke. So that's, I guess, the safest way, if there is a safe way to use it.
Is that we're hearing about vape pens? Is that a vape pen or?
Yep, vape pens. But now you got to be careful with some of the vape pens and the cartridges and things, because again, it's a lot like when I say the wild, wild west, I refer to that often because I feel like that's where we are with regulations. And I'm not a big regulation person, except when it comes to our health, there probably are some things that we need to put in place. You are seeing a large number of people within, I guess it's been in the last 10 10 years, 15 years, where you've seen the rates of like post-accident drug screens have gone up over 200%.
Wow.
You know, so you see, and a lot of that, the reason I mention that is because you have people using it in the workplace, using the vape pens and things like that. But they seem to be a little more safer than inhaling, you know, just rolling up a joint. So I guess that's the best way I can put that.
And then edibles.
Edibles are the most dangerous, and this is interesting too. Edibles being the most dangerous route that you can go because it doesn't hit like a joint or like the dry or vaporizer thing that you can use. It doesn't hit at the same amount of time. So what'll happen is you eat a brownie and you're like, I'm fine. You eat another one and you're not fine in 45 minutes when they both hit at the same time. And so that's where you see the overdoses in adults and kids. You see the overdoses more commonly with edibles. So, and that's what the retail market really opens up. And when you get into like traffic fatalities, I know we're going to talk a little bit about that a little further on in the talk, but it's interesting the impact that edibles have and the impact that the retail stores have. I was kind of shocked by some of that data.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the differences in the actual cannabis that people can get now versus back in the day and the way people consume it. Let's talk a little bit about the social acceptability as well. Did you have another thought?
One quick thing that I didn't mention that is dabbing. I don't know if you're familiar with dabbing, but that's a way they use it's almost like a butane lighter and things where they heat it up. And that's where you really get into the concentrates. And they sell these little dab like machine, like, I don't know, it's almost like a little folder, like a little like thing that you all comes in one. And those concentrates are where you get the most like THC per hit. And so those are really where you start to see the overdoses and stuff, which, you know, as a kid, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this. You can't overdose on weed.
Right.
You can. Yeah, you can. So we can talk about that later.
And well, I mean, you brought it up. Let's go there now.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when you're saying you can overdose on weed, is that now because of these new concentrates and the dabbing versus just smoking flower?
Yeah, I think because, and even now the flower can be because it is so much stronger. I mean, just think 4 times, it was 4% when we were young, and now it's up to 25% just in the flower. You know, so you can still overdose on that. And I know someone whose child overdosed just smoking weed. I mean, so it wasn't dabbing, but you make a great point. A lot of the higher concentrates are where you're getting, you know, more THC. And actually the interesting thing that is almost diabolical, if you will, the CBD content has been drawn down. So as the THC has gone up, the CBD has gone down, and we're going to talk about the medicinal purposes in a little while as well, but that's where the CBD is where you see all the benefit for, you know, on the medical side, not really THC.
I want to follow up on the overdosing. What does that look like? When we think of someone overdosing on drugs, we think of life's in jeopardy. They might die, you know, unless they're saved at the right time. I mean, are you talking about the same type of thing?
No, there haven't been any fatalities to date.
So what's an overdose look like on weed?
Vomiting.
Okay.
Really, it's vomiting, nonstop vomiting, can't keep anything down, and you're in the hospital. Like the person that I know, their daughter overdosed just smoking weed it was last July when they were like, hey, you can smoke weed now. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna smoke weed all day. And so she ended up in the hospital, and she was in it for a week, just constant vomiting, like can't keep anything down, and I mean, I don't know the physiological effects outside of the vomiting, but that's a big one. But it's actually interesting is that, you know, 15 years ago, there wasn't even a diagnosis code really for, you know, Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome. That's what it is when you're overdose. That didn't even exist 15 years ago. If it did, it was way down in the DSM.
How common is it now?
You know, it's it has increased because of the addition of the edibles, I think, is where you see the biggest problem with the overdose. I mean, like I said, it's so much more potent now, so you can smoke yourself into oblivion. You can smoke yourself into the hospital, if you will. But, you know, more likely it's going to be your edibles. And, you know, and too, it's the kids. I mean, the increase in overdose in kids just eating cookies and brownies that their parents bought and they didn't know weren't safe is off the charts.
And it's interesting that you bring up the edibles because of, and I can understand where it might be more, dangerous, especially with the overdose, because of the lag time right before it kicks in. So, like you said, you eat one brownie, whatever it is, gummy, and then you're like, that didn't do anything. So you're taking a couple more, and then they all hit at once, and it's game over.
Well, I mean, for interesting example, and it's crazy, but you've seen those Fiber One bars that are delicious. They're so good. If you eat one, it's okay. My daughter, when she was like 9 or 10, ate a whole box of the chocolate ones. And it was terrible because too much of even a good thing is bad. And so it's a similar situation where, like, if you eat too much of those Fiber One bars, you're going to be, spending some time in the bathroom. Well, if you smoke too much marijuana, you're probably going to spend some time in the ER, which now, and we didn't even see that 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't around.
Let's talk about the social acceptability now of it. And I mean, it's trickled way down. I mean, we're seeing people our age just pulling it out at parties like it's no big deal. Kids nowadays, smoking it, a lot of parents like cool with it, especially for kids at younger ages. It's drastically changed to the point where I think a lot of folks feel it's on the same level as alcohol.
I would never sit here and say that they're on the same level when it comes to fatalities. Alcohol, the last number I saw was 178,000 people annually that alcohol, claims the lives of. So I would never say that it's the same as alcohol on that level, or that marijuana is just as dangerous, because the facts just don't show that. They don't. Like I said, I'm not for marijuana usage and increased amounts, but that's the truth. Alcohol is still far worse. But what we're seeing with marijuana is psychosis.
Let me stop you for just a second, because looking at the social acceptability, right? I mean, alcohol is everywhere.
It is.
Right? I mean, we talked about, the hundreds, maybe thousands of different types of bourbon that's out there. Beer, breweries are popping up everywhere. Having a drink with dinner, having, a drink to unwind or whatever. I mean, that's commonplace, right? Everybody, maybe not everybody does it, but most people are, okay with it. It's part of society. It feels like marijuana is getting to that point.
So I think what happened is, like we've said it a couple of times in this interview, is that, there was a time where marijuana was pretty much taboo. And so I think we demonized it to a point where, it was so far demonized that now we've kind of shifted to where now it's harmless. Like, it's just marijuana, and neither is right. I don't think it probably deserved the demonization that it got. But it certainly doesn't, we're not at a place where it's harmless, and so especially with the concentrations and the potency of it, I think we definitely have to be careful with that. But when it comes to overall dependence, the impact on mental health, and some of those things with marijuana, those are certainly areas that we need to spend some time, because psychosis and addiction and the adolescent use, and the overall the ability for people to be able to overdose, those are real concerns right now. And even though it has gotten to a point where, like, for example, I was talking to the SHRM group about the legalization of marijuana and what it's doing in the Commonwealth. And just so people would have some dates to know that, July 1st, 2027 is when the retail stores are going to kick off and some of the other things. But when I asked the crowd, which was, a diverse demographic of ages specifically, and I asked some of the younger people in the room, I said, so, what do you guys, I said, let's just do a poll that's not scientific here. Let's just raise your hand if, in your experience, your friend groups, how do they treat marijuana versus alcohol? Are they the same? And most of them said that alcohol's worse. That's kind of, so I think we're getting there. In 2022 was the first time that people who use marijuana surpassed people who drink alcohol daily.
Wow.
And so that's a big deal. And it fleshed out in my little non-scientific poll at SHRM with some of the young folks that were just like, yeah, people almost look at alcohol as worse.
What about older
marijuana.
folks our age and older? Because it's been pointed out to me that I'm an old folk now.
Me too. I think when you hit 50, it's over. People consider you old then. But yeah, I think for our age demographic, we did grow up where it was demonized. And I think that's probably why I still have such strong feelings against it. You know, I just do. And, you know, I think that other people our age are becoming more accepting of it. I've just seen that. I don't know if you have, but I've seen that. But I would caution people that while we worry about psychosis, and it is much higher with the higher concentrates of psychosis, and especially young men, very prevalent. But as we start to consider those things for the youth, what's it do to older people? Well, now we know that there's a six time increase in cardiovascular events with older people. So it's not harmless. It's not harmless. And so there's real data, and that's from the American Journal of Cardiology. And so they've studied it. And I think the legalization on a federal level is probably never going to happen because of DOT. Well, I personally hope that these guys driving trucks are never allowed to be high, even on the weekend. I don't care. But the decriminalization on a nationwide, on a federal level, I think is important because it's going to free up money to be able to study what it really does. Because right now, you can't really study it. So a lot of the studies that we have may be industry funded. You know, I want some, non-biased studies that just look into, we don't want to know whether we want to be pro-smoke or anti-smoke. We want to know what are the health implications for adults and children both. And I think they've already shown that in the Medical Journal of Cardiology where, you're seeing an increase in heart attacks and strokes and cardiovascular events. So, I mean, it's definitely something to consider for older folks, and the young kids. Dependence is a big deal. I mean, and I think it's a far bigger deal than it was with alcohol. Do you know any of your friends who were addicted to alcohol?
At a young age? Not really.
Not really. Me either. I promise you, if I ask my son, he could tell me a handful of people, if not more, that literally smoke marijuana every day. And so I never knew anybody who drank every day. Not at my age. I didn't know anyone like that. All right, so marijuana is different in that regard. So
okay, well let me ask you this. You talk about not knowing anyone who drinks every day, but I certainly know people who do.
I do now that I'm older. I know people, but not as a kid.
But even
teenager,
like my dad, a beer with dinner, right, or a glass of wine with dinner, or something like that. I mean, I wouldn't, just because you're doing it every day, I wouldn't term somebody like that an alcoholic because, I mean, you're not drinking to the point of, you can't stand up or whatever the case may be. Is there an equivalent with smoking?
I don't have the experience with the marijuana, but I mean, you can drink vastly different.
And you can drink a beer and it's not really going to affect you, right? I mean, you can drink a beer and hop in a car.
Yeah.
You could. You can't take one hit of something and then hop in a car because.
I mean, I think there's a difference it depends on how you're using it. So if you're using some of the concentrated stuff or eating the brownies, and it just depends on how you're using it. There's a lot of different ways. Like if you drink, a couple glasses of wine, that you can't get in a car and drive because you're going to be over the legal limit. Because that does bring us to the legality part that, we've talked about on the morning line a bunch that, it's just not a good way to test for marijuana right now. So we don't have like with alcohol, it's 0.08 in Virginia, that. And so there's a definite line that you can't cross. You don't know where you cross it personally, but 2-3 beers, you're over the line. So you don't want to drive, but with marijuana, there's really not an established level yet. I think we're headed that way, but I don't know how soon we're going to get there. I mean, we've had breathalyzers on the market for marijuana. And
do they work?
They worked. Yeah.
So you can tell if someone's currently high.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and there were two companies. One was called Hound Labs, and another one is Cannabis. And Cannabis is still in business. Hound Labs went out of business, and the main reason was like I had it. I had the breathalyzer for marijuana, and you could tell within 1 to 3 hours of use, and seemed great, but it was really expensive to buy it per test. Really expensive, and so what happened is they priced themselves out of the market. I couldn't provide a breathalyzer for marijuana for less than $225, $250. So while it seems great, how often are you going to use it? So if they expect you to put $10,000 up front to buy the equipment, and then you're paying that much per test, your margins are only $25 or $30 on a test because you're paying so much for the cartridges, and then you've already paid so much for the equipment. $250 if you're only doing a few of those a month, it's going to take you years. It's a loss. And so the same thing happened for Hound Labs on a nationwide level, and they went out of business.
Compare the price. You said $250 per test.
Yeah, per test.
In that ballpark.
Compared to $50, 45, yeah, 45 or $50. No, an alcohol test can be, 45, anywhere from $45 to $65 for a test.
Because I'm just thinking cops, right? I mean, they've got breathalyzers, that they can give people in the field.
Yeah.
And, to be able to do the same thing, right? Because if they test negative for alcohol, you got to give them the weed one, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because you see them driving erratically, something's going on here.
Something's going on, yeah.
And you got to figure it out.
Right. And so it is interesting. The technology is fascinating to me, and I followed it for probably 10 years before I jumped on it. But Hound Labs had all of the funding here in the United States. The government really got behind it and funded it. But when it came time for them to go on their own, they just couldn't make it. But Cannabis is working, like you said, you mentioned with the police. They are very prevalent on the West Coast. So California Highway Patrol has been using it for a couple of years now. And so I think they're just trying to, so they're dialing it in.
With good results?
Good results, yeah. Good results. Very accurate. It's very accurate. They need to dial it in to where they can make it widely available and not be so expensive.
Well, and you said also, there's no level per se. That's the legally accepted level, but again, I don't know. It feels like if you're using marijuana, you're getting high, right? Whereas you can have a drink or two and not get drunk.
Right.
So if it's in your system in the last 3 hours, you shouldn't be driving.
That's right. And that's the idea behind the technology.
Gotcha.
Is at this point, it shouldn't matter what you did.
It's not a question of how much. It's just whether you did or didn't.
Did or didn't. Yeah, it's either positive or negative.
Okay.
And so, there's no level that they've established yet, and it is 1 to 3 hours. Then you could say with confidence that contributed to driving under the influence, or whether it was maybe a fork truck accident or something like that. So,
want to get back to the comparison to alcohol.
Yeah.
The way you described it, you made it sound like alcohol is worse for you than weed. Is that right?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I'd say they're on the same level.
Okay.
But when we talk about fatalities, there's no comparison there. Alcohol kills a lot more people. That's just the truth. That's a fact.
And we're not talking about just
having a beer. We're not. Yeah, people who drink themselves to death.
Gotcha.
And,
okay.
It's definitely. But for me, when we started broaching the topic of legalizing marijuana, I was against it because I feel like you're just doubling down, and the studies show that you think, well, people are going to use one or the other. No, people that used to just drink will now drink and smoke. So it's both. So you're doubling down on, just whether it's, what causes people to drink, if it's because they can't sleep or whatever, you're starting to see the studies show that it's not one or the other, it's both. So, I just feel like we're opening the door to worse outcomes, if you will.
Let me ask you this. If it were one or another and someone said, look, I just need to chill out and relax on a weekend, what am I better off doing? Having a few drinks or having a little weed?
That's tough. You're not going to get me on the record on that one.
but I mean, it's that close.
It is.
So,
it really is. We're at that point. I mean, but I think the difference is the age.
Okay.
Is the age of people diving into marijuana, the potential for dependency is so much higher. And because I'm telling you, you see people like wake and bake is a real thing, and it happens. I see it in the workplace all the time, that people who come to work, and I get the call like, hey, something's not right with such and such. I need you to come and do a test. And so we're going to do a urine test, and it's going to be, it's going to look back at 30 days, or 60 days. It just depends. A lot of different factors there. But, that's people who wake up and use daily, is a big deal. And now they say that, between 1 and 3 teenagers who smoke marijuana smoke it every day. So it's not like just a drink on the weekend to kind of chill out. So maybe I will go on the record on that one, because dependency is much higher, the potential. And we're just on the precipice of it right now. So now it's coming out into the light where more and more people are using marijuana than they are alcohol. So what's the data gonna say? If you've got 1 in 3, that are smoking it every day, I don't think it's going to be good. So,
and to kind of wrap up the part of the conversation, comparing it to alcohol, is it fair to say that, at least in your opinion, that looking at these two, kind of on a comparable level from a social standpoint, is reasonable? Do we look more down on someone who smokes weed versus someone who drinks, or? Oh,
I think we're past that. I think we are past that. I mean, I think that
in terms of
just acceptance.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's acceptance, but I think it's more accepted with
younger people.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to eventually get to a point where it's just interchangeable. I do see that happening, whether I like it or not. That's what's happening.
So,
for sure.
When we were growing up, right? I mean, skipping school, someone's got a keg, whatever. Yeah. I mean, now it seems like, from what you're saying, more of the kids are using weed than
at
they
school.
are alcohol.
Yeah, they have the little pens. They're using them at school, yeah.
But the impact and the effect that cannabis can have on younger people is
significant.
Extremely concerning, correct?
Very concerning.
Talk about that.
Just because the impact that it has on the developing brain. I mean, that's the biggest. I mean, because I'm sure you've heard like over and over again, like, oh, your brain doesn't start developing until 25, 28, and I mentioned how devastating it is for young men. Young men, it really has there's a higher potential for overdose and a lot of different things that.
Do we know why
for young men?
For young men?
Probably the same reason our car insurance is higher. We're dumb. We're the ones who are pushing the limits, driving fast, and so it's kind of with anything. It seems like we are just not as smart as the ladies when it comes to that stuff. So I mean, I don't know that there's been a proven reason why it's worse in young men. That's what the statistics show, that it's worse in young men.
And as far as the brain development, that goes for both guys and girls.
Men and women, yeah.
Now, alcohol doesn't have that same impact?
It does, but the difference is the amount of use. So alcohol is terrible for your brain too, but the studies are showing that 1 in 3 smoke every day, not 1 in 3 people drink every day. And like I mentioned, 2022, the amount of people smoking every day passed drinking. So it's 2026. That was 4 years ago. I haven't seen new data to see what it says. But I think it's the daily use that makes it far more dangerous for the developing brain, and the fact that it's so strong now. And you see psychosis more common in young men too. So that's, I think, because we just go all out. You didn't see girls funneling beers, but you did see all your buddies doing it. every now and then you might. But you know what I'm saying? That was, most of your guys are doing the keg stands because that's the way guys are. And so you do see a higher rate of psychosis with
probably because they're using it more or abusing it.
Yeah, I would call it abuse. If you're smoking every day, it's abuse.
Okay.
In the same way I would call drinking every day abuse. I mean, one beer is different than, 3 or 4 or 5, 6-pack.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about some of the health benefits that we've heard about, right? Because that was one of the big things that we were hearing about, I don't know, I'd say the last, 10 to 15 years is, but it's got all these benefits. It helps with cancer patients. It helps, relieve people with mental illness. It helps with nausea. It helps with different things. What does it help with? And from what you were saying earlier, it's not so much the THC as the CBD.
Correct. And so that's really where I come down on it from my position as what we call it a thought leader or in the community when it comes to marijuana and drug and alcohol testing. That's where I really come down onto is separating the medicinal value from the marketing. And really the medicinal side is primarily found with CBD. The THC that's what gets you high. And so it's weird I think it's intentional, but the CBD has gone down while the THC has gone up is definitely on purpose. But that's the marketing side of things. But really we see there's an FDA indication for pediatric epilepsy with a product called Epidiolex. And so it's proven to help with Epidiolex, but that's primarily the CBD. And then you do also see some positive studies in nausea-induced nausea that comes from chemo. Mm-hmm. Chemo-induced nausea, that's the word I was looking for.
And is that, again, CBD more than THC?
That is, they haven't really broke that down to say if it's CBD or THC that I could see in the literature. It was just that using, marijuana could help with that and also helps with MS spasticity. So some of the spasticity that goes on with MS, it can help there. Where the data is not clear and would be probably, has been oversold is chronic pain and neuropathic pain. And then actually marijuana has shown to make like some of the mental illnesses that you mentioned actually make those worse. So that's where we are on the data right now. That's the medicinal side versus the marketing, because marketing would say, oh yeah, it can help you sleep better and all this stuff, which now some of the data is showing, because I can't tell you how many people have told me now that it's legal, it's like almost like people are proud of it. Like it's kind of funny that they want to tell me like, oh yeah, I smoke weed, but that's all I do. And I just use it for bed because I can't sleep at night. And so they've shown now, the studies show now that marijuana sleep is the same as drunk sleep, and you never reach REM or deep sleep. And we know that's where all the restoration happens, is in your REM sleep and your deep sleep. And so if you think you're smoking it to go to sleep, it's not helping you. It's not helping you recover. It's not helping your brain to reset and your body to reset.
So you're not getting a good quality sleep.
You're not getting a good quality sleep. It's a drunk sleep. You wake up the next day and you're still tired. So, and not to mention, tiredness is one thing, but I think the being able to restore your brain and, it's, and this is 100% my analogy, but potheads who are like, hey man, that kind of, is that because their brain never gets restored? I'm just saying, are we seeing it in the data now? That's totally that's just a
we could all think of the TV characters or the movie characters.
Cheech and Chong's, man.
Cheech and Chong, Spicoli from Fast Times.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So you see these guys and you're like, maybe it's because you never ever get real good sleep. That's what the studies are showing. But yeah, I digress.
Kind of looking at this, right? CBD versus THC, and you're saying that there are all these different kinds of, and in doing some, some research for this thing. I mean, I'm reading about, sativa and indica and all these different strains that apparently, have all these different, characteristics of what they do. This gives you, what's it called? Couch lock. This makes you more active. This makes you hungry. This one, not so much. This one's got a body high. This one's got a head high. Is that all marketing?
That's all marketing.
It's all marketing.
It's all marketing. But I mean, there are differences in potency.
Okay.
And so that may be what it comes down. I'm really not familiar with the specific differences in each of those, but it's all potency is the difference. When you start talking about different strands, that's the potency part.
Okay.
And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, it's just like taking anything else. Everything affects people different. And that's the crazy thing about marijuana too, is when you look at the overwhelming amount of data that's out there now, especially in kids, it's just terrible. It's terrible. And whereas you used to be able to say, well, some things will affect people in different ways. We know specifically in kids, it affects them terrible. And so our youth using marijuana up into, 25 to 30 is just not good. And then we know that after 30, between 30 and 50, you get a 6-fold increase in cardiovascular risks. I'm like, who's it safe for? I think it's like anything else. I mean, we are where we are now. Like, I can't stop it. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. I think our best position would be regulation at this point. And why do we have to have this super strong stuff? Why don't they regulate that? Because they found that in Colorado that legalization didn't increase the fatalities like on the highways. What did increase 92% the fatalities on the highways was the opening of the retail stores. And so that's where we're going in Virginia. Next year, we're opening the retail stores, like 350 stores, so evenly spaced out and all that stuff.
In your opinion, is that, or maybe there's data out there to back it up, is it because it's making it more accessible for everybody and more people are just like, oh, I can just go to the store and buy someone rather than have to find my guy, right?
Yeah, I think it's a combination, and it's specifically they link it to the potency. It's a combination of the availability, but I mean, once it was legalized, it was far more available, and it still didn't cause this crazy increase. The opening of the retail stores did, and the commonality is that the retail stores are where you get the really strong stuff. And so I think there should be somebody that can come in. It doesn't seem like anybody can be reasonable anymore and think like with common sense. But I think knowing that is already, that data is there. Like there, as you're, in the House or the Senate or wherever you are, and you're making the laws, and you're considering the data that exists when you're setting caps and different things like that. Why would you open the stores without caps? Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. When you know that not having caps caused this crazy, increase in fatalities, why wouldn't you have caps? So, I think now that the cat is out of the bag, then I think from my perspective, I would like to see better regulation, really. You're not going to stop people from doing it.
All right, let's talk a little bit, and we're talking once again with Ryan Gordon of Blue Ridge Scientific on the evolution of cannabis. And where it's at in this day and age. Legalization in Virginia, it's been legal to use recreationally. There are stores, right, the Rise dispensaries, but those are specifically for medicinal purposes. But beginning next July 1st, it's going to be the Wild West, as you described it earlier.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the legality and, in the workplace. How do employers deal with this?
It's a great question. And I don't have the magical answer, but I can tell you what I advise every single one of my clients is that the beautiful thing in Virginia is that it's still your choice. You can decide how you want to treat it in the workplace. You can say zero tolerance. And will you maybe potentially limit your applicant pool? Yeah. And at some point, like in California, it can't even be a considering thing in California. So maybe we get to that point. But right now in Virginia, you can still choose. You have a right. And it's never going to be okay to be high at work, ever. Like that, it's never going to be okay. Well, it doesn't matter what your alcohol's legal, but it's not legal to come to work drunk.
Right.
So it's never going to be okay to be at work high either.
But there's no way to know.
There is. So great point. So now what I educate my customers on is that you have to have more than the smell of marijuana, because it's so invasive. That smell is so invasive. You can't even pull up to a red light and not smell it somewhere. And so if you're in a car that someone, let's just say you're a passenger in a car of someone who smokes a lot of weed daily, maybe they're one of the ones in 3 that use every day, and their car smells like marijuana, and you're just riding in the car, you're probably going to get out smelling like marijuana. That's just how it is. It's that invasive. And so I tell my employers all the time is that you have to match a couple of other things with the smell. So is it that they're always late for work? Is it that their eyes are bloodshot? Is it that, they have other the signs and symptoms? And we go through a reasonable suspicion training where I go through all the signs and symptoms of alcohol abuse and misuse, and the same thing for marijuana and other drugs. And so we just kind of say, these are some of the signs and symptoms that you can look for, and be able to couple that with the smell, with the tardiness, with the, the decrease in their productivity, things like that, to be able to make a call that says, I think that marijuana is contributing to whatever, and then I also tell them that if you have safety sensitive jobs, like let's say you have a machinist that's working a lathe, or you have truck drivers or forklift drivers that are safety sensitive, number one thing is make sure that your job description says that it's a safety sensitive job, and then you can treat it with 0 tolerance ever. Like, so you're not going to smoke on the weekend and come to work Monday. I know you can be completely sober, but we're not taking that chance because you are in a position where, safety is a concern. So you see a lot of employers doing that. We still have a lot of employers who are 0 tolerance across the board. But what you've seen in some of the manufacturing specifically, where they've kind of lightened their position on it. But the thing to keep in mind is that the studies also show that after marijuana was legalized, within 2 years, you see a 7.7% increase in your workers' comp claims. So that's real money, like to employers. Like, I mean, you hear them talk about it all the time. Like, well, we're trying to avoid this claim, got to do this, got to do that. I mean, and we work with employers every day to get people back to work, whether it's light duty. If they can work, let's have them work. If they can't, then we write them out. But let's if they can work, let's get them in there. But if your workers' comp claims go up 7.7 in the first 2 years, guess what happens in 5 years? 15%.
Wow.
So significant. I mean, and it's not my opinion. Those are just hard numbers that come from the insurance world. And so that's what employers have to guard against. So as you're developing your policy to be able to deal with it, you have to consider that. Like if I allow drugs into the workplace, marijuana, whatever, if I allow that into the workplace, I know that it may hit me on the workers' comp side. That's what the data shows.
So when you're saying you can have a 0 tolerance policy, despite the fact that it's legal to use, I'm assuming you can do that for other things too, whether it be nicotine, alcohol. Yeah. Can you have a 0
Think about Sentra. Sentra doesn't let you smoke. Remember, I'm sure you've heard of people going to the car to smoke, and then they change it to smoke-free campus. So you got to get in your car and leave. So, they can. They can have a policy that says, but like you said, you do start to narrow your applicant pool. And so that's why I've found that a lot of my employers who have high turnover, hot, laborious work, those companies have been like, well, we're having trouble with our applicant pool, so let's allow, but I've seen it really backfire too. Because the idea was if you can lighten those restrictions a little bit and allow people who use marijuana to come into the workplace. When 1 in 3 do it daily, you're going to get people who do it daily. And so what happened to 3 different manufacturers that I won't name that were some of the first companies that I work with that allowed marijuana into the workplace and publicized it and said, hey, listen, we are changing things. The idea was we can tap into a whole workforce of people who haven't been working because they're afraid, well, I can't get a job, so I'm just going to try to get, assistance or whatever, maybe work side jobs and not be on the payroll of any company because I can't pass drug test. So we can tap into them. And so when that happened, what you got was decreasing your quality of your product, delayed completion of products, and tardiness, and just people who would work for a couple weeks and then not show up anymore. And so that's what I think the everyday use of anything, whether it's alcohol, drugs, the everyday use, constant use of it, ends up having that negative effect. And those 3 employers were some of the first ones that either relocated out of our area or went out of business. And so those are the first 3 that I know that lightened it. But now there are a lot of companies, to be fair, that have lightened that restriction and haven't had that happen to them. But I know that was a eye-opening thing for me initially.
When you say that, employers can really have whatever rules they want, is that because of the way that it's structured here in Virginia?
Yeah.
Where,
at will.
At will. Yep. Okay.
At will.
So even if an employer suspects somebody's getting high at work, they don't really need proof?
My recommendation, they don't. They really don't. But my recommendation is always that you go through a reasonable suspicion checklist.
Okay.
And I provide that to employers.
Okay.
When I go on site and do the training.
What are, rattle off some of the things that are on that checklist.
So,
and you touched on some.
Yeah,
of them.
I did.
Bloodshot eyes, always being tardy. The smell of marijuana.
Yeah, you're going right down it, but it could be, a decrease in job performance. So you see someone who's always been a top performer, they start to slack a little bit. They're late all the time. They could also be, someone who is more prone to accidents. And that happens. That definitely happens. And then you could have, like financial problems. So you start to get into some of the hard drugs like cocaine and some of the things. You can have, financial trouble. You can have people stealing from you. So there's a lot of different signs and symptoms that go, and you start to just, people being disorganized, like not shaving. Someone who's always clean shave and all of a sudden they're not shaving anymore. So you start to worry about things like that. Maybe they're having trouble at home. So I always encourage my employers to, get engaged with your people. Make sure that you're talking to them, because I wouldn't want someone to be accused of using drugs because they didn't shave, but they're growing their beard out for No Shave November.
Right.
But if you're not talking to them, you don't know what's going on. They're late a few days and not shaving, and you think, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And then you smell weed on them. You're like, oh gosh, something bad may be happening. But, they may just have a friend, that smokes weed a lot. They don't do it themselves. And, and so I think that.
Can an employer require someone to have a test?
Yeah. Yeah. But I always have them fill out this checklist, and I always I recommend, it's not requirement, but I recommend that you have dual confirmation, 2 people. So independent of one another. So let's say that you and I are here working at the radio station and Biscuit comes in smelling like weed. Not that he ever would, but I just happened to see him walk by. Let's say you had a suspicion. We were both working here. I was an employee here, and you said, I'm a supervisor here. And you said, well, I think, maybe something might be wrong with Biscuit today. Then, could you go and check him out? And so independent of one another, I go and say, yeah, I smelled it. I saw this. I saw that. Have them document specifically what they saw, what they smelled, the way the conversation was. And then we would compare our notes. You would sign off on it. I would sign off and say, yeah, I think it's time to get a test ordered. And so that's kind of the process that I go through with people.
And then all that test is going to show is that he used it at some point in the last month.
True.
But then you could say, okay, I know he uses it. We've seen these things.
That's right. And so it is contributing.
And it's nothing absolutely conclusive, but it's kind of like reasonable doubt type
That's
of
right.
thing.
That's right.
Gotcha.
And that's why I say you have to add the other factors to it. So it's not just a smell. It's not just he's late one day. It's not just one thing. It's 2, 3 things that you're like, oh, this isn't right. So I think it's time to order a test. And plus, a lot of times you'll have, people that will come and tell you like, hey, yeah, this is, such and such, is doing this or doing that. And then so you have to be able to determine whether or not this is just someone being a narc or it's real, So.
And as far as cops and driving under the influence.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying the tests do exist. They're being used in
California right now,
and the
yep.
West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see them? I mean, do you see at some point here in the next, 6 months, year, 2 years?
No.
That we'll be seeing them everywhere? Or no?
I don't. I mean, because I would have thought if it was going to take hold, it would have been with Hound Labs, because Hound Labs had a lot more money, were a lot faster to market than Cannabis. And I don't know how long it's going to be before we're able to do that. But I think it makes it even more important to be able to determine impairment and look at the reasonable suspicion kind of checklist and signs and symptoms. I think it makes that super important.
So how do cops do that?
So I think they do the field sobriety. Those are kind of things that they'll do. I mean, and I think that cops are more likely to, let the marijuana smell go if there's no other signs or symptoms. So like they're looking for the eyes, and they do shine. I'm not shining lights in people's eyes. So they can tell like pupil response and different things like that. So they have other ways to determine whether or not you might be under the influence of something.
Okay.
So it's not unreasonable to say, okay, I've done a field sobriety check. I'm looking at your eyes. I can see what your pupils are doing, and you smell like marijuana. It's not unreasonable to say it's probably marijuana. You're probably smoking marijuana. So I think that's where the cops kind of come down on it.
And does that, as far as you know, hold up in court?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so it's not like alcohol where you can flat out say he's got a 0.12 or whatever.
Right. No, it's not like that. But now it's a great question about the marijuana breathalyzer in California. Off the top of my head, I don't know whether or not the legal aspect of it, if it has been upheld in court yet. I don't know that. I just know the accuracy of it has been upheld. Like I shouldn't say upheld, has been established.
We covered a couple of these things, but I figured I'd throw a little fact or fiction at you.
Yeah, let's roll.
First of all, and we touched on this, but if you want to expand on anything, please do. But fact or fiction, weed's addicting.
Absolutely. I think the data shows that it's addicting, and you see the increase in use, and that's one of the big concerns is dependence, and people, 1 in 3 people using it every day. And if you've ever really, it's interesting. I guess I'm involved with a lot of people now. Like I said, they want to tell you that they smoke weed. That's all they do. Is I don't even drink, but I do smoke weed. I hear that. I've heard it 1,000 times. And I think people are so much more likely to tell you that they do it. I think when you look at the studies, it really backs that up, that 1 in 3 people are using it every day. And when they try to stop, the withdrawal is real. A lot of the headaches and a lot of the things that come from the withdrawal symptoms that come from, abrupt cessation of anything that you use like that. I think that speaks to the dependency part. And again, the fact that Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome wasn't even a diagnosis 15 years ago in the DSM, and it is now, and I think that that's something that definitely speaks to dependence. I think it's there.
And I think you hit on my next one, but, withdrawal, that's a real thing?
It's a real thing, yeah. I hear people talk about it all the time, and
not to the degree of some of the other more
no, it's not like heroin, but it's still real. To where anything that makes you want to do it again, and again and again and again, even to the detriment of what you're doing. I think that's because I can't tell you how many people have said, like, if I can't smoke weed and work here, I'm not working here. What's that tell you? And I have heard that numerous times. Where they're like, oh, I thought it was okay to smoke weed and work here. I'm like, no, they have zero tolerance here. Like, oh, well, I'm going to have to find me another job. Okay. All right.
People are going to do what they're going to do.
They're going to do it, yeah. I just had a guy last week who, as he would say it, he just took the L because he had a sample in his boot. I was doing some drug screens on site at a location out in a field. And we were using Porta-Johns, and so I checked their boots and their waistband and make them take off their hard hat before I let them go. And he had a sample in his boot that he was sneaking in, And it's because he uses marijuana and there's zero tolerance.
What, at Blue Ridge Scientific, you do this testing all the time. What's some of the craziest stuff you've seen?
Oh my gosh. The craziest one I've ever seen. I've seen it. I'll give you two, and I'll try to make them fast. But one is I went on site. There's a manufacturing plant. This guy comes in, is well put together, got his little toolbox and all of his stuff in there. He's a welder. Like, he's got everything. It's perfect. Like, wow, this guy is something. But the manager stopped me before I got into the room. He was like, hey, listen, when he came up to do his test, he had to go over to the toolboxes on the side, and we think he may have put something in his sock. So we want you to check him real good. I was like, okay. You can only check so much, So I was like, all right, I'll do everything I can. And so I had him pull up his pant leg, and I saw, this bottle of, if you remember, we're the same age, Very Fine is a brand of like apple juice, orange juice. They sold at schools. Very Fine apple juice came out of his pants pocket and like came out of his pants leg. And I said, what's that? And he's like, oh, that's just my juice. He's like, I just got a hole in my pocket. It's like, oh, okay. I was like, well, I want to make sure that you can provide a sample. So go ahead and drink some of your juice. Dude cracks the top, Rich, I'm not kidding you, takes a drink, and that was somebody else's pee, not his.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, it gets a little bit better. It stunned me. And I'm ashamed because it was poor collector protocol on my part. It stunned me so bad that he took a drink of it that I didn't say another word to him. And I was like, all right, well, we're going to go give the sample. And we go in, and the sample comes up, and it's under 90 on the temperature scale. Mm-hmm. He had kept it in his mouth and spit it in the cup. And I was like, he didn't swallow it. He held it in his mouth, which is probably worse. And it was someone else's pee. And honestly, I'm not kidding you. I went back and I told the management team what had happened. They were like, well, we're going to do one under observation. You're going to go in there and watch him pee. And I did. And he failed, for 3 drugs. He had marijuana, methamphetamines, and cocaine, all 3. Oh. Trifecta. And so, he was using lots of drugs. But I told the management staff, I was like, this is like prison stuff. Like, has this guy been to prison? Like, I don't know. And I said, but I can tell you one thing. He really, really wants to work here. Any man who would take a swig of someone else's pee and then try to hold it in their mouth and spit it in the cup, like, whew, that's next level.
Wow.
So then the other one is, so I'm testing this. It's a bunch of roofers this time. And this guy comes in, and I'm like, empty your pockets. And so as a collector, any part of the collection protocol, once we start the test, if people like push back and are defiant, I can end the test and say you fail. Like, that's my prerogative to do that. I literally,
like legally,
yeah, legally, I can. It's called a refusal to test. Any part of the collection process that they don't go along with. And so I've had people push back, and then I'll try to convince them, because I'm like, I don't want you to fail. Like, right. I'm trying to do my job. You got to pee in this cup, whatever. And so this guy's giving me a hard time. And I'm like, he's being really weird. So you've got to empty your pockets. He's like, well, I don't want to empty my pockets. I don't want to. And I said, well, you have to. You have to empty your pockets. He's like, well, I don't know why I have to empty my pockets. And we're in an office. Like, imagine right here, this table right here. If you emptied your pockets, he took out this little Altoid looking like tin. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
A little smaller, the Altoid tin. He set it on the table. And when he did, ants went everywhere, all over, like everywhere, like 1,000 ants. He looked at me dead serious and he said, don't worry, they'll run away. I was like, what? What do you mean they'll run away? And he was like, they run away. And I was like, okay. So then we proceed into the bathroom, and all of these collections were observed. So there was no cheating. You're not going to cheat me on those. And so I watched him, and he was not happy. I thought he wanted to fight me. And eventually he failed. So, he had a sample in his pocket. That's why he didn't want to empty his pockets, because he tried to keep it in there.
What were the ants all about?
I don't know. I said, I literally met the man with ants in his pants. I met him. I know who he is. I know what he looks like. I thought that was an old wives' tale, but no, he literally had ants in his pants. But they didn't make him dance. He just took it in stride. But that's 2 of the craziest. But I could go on I need to write a book.
Mostly guys?
No, I mean, I would say mostly guys, but I did have a lady who had this really tight dress on, and she had like what looked like something tied around her waist. Like maybe it was like one of those belly button rings that they have, like a necklace that goes around their waist and then a little belly. And so I saw it and I was like, what in the world is that? And I was like, well, we're going to go to the bathroom, and the manager comes, the HR lady comes out of the back, like her pants are on fire. And she's like, hey, we need to have someone go in there with her. And I was like, why? She's like, because there is a wet spot in the chair where she was sitting. So she either peed in our chair or she's got something in her dress. And I was like, how could she have anything in her dress? So she had a rope tied around her waist and a sample dangling between her legs in this mini skirt. And she had to actually take it off and show it to me. And I was like, because she was like, I really need this job. I need this job. I was like, well, you can't try to cheat the test or you're going to fail. Like, she's like, well, I need this job. I need this job. And she eventually failed the test anyway. But I at least got her to take the rope off and show it to me. Like, I have a picture of the rope. I'll have to show you sometime, of this thing that she had, and she just had it dangling between her legs.
Wow.
Yeah, I could go on and on and on. There's so many stories. But
Dude, crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Crazy. But I mean, people want to keep their jobs.
People want to keep their jobs, but they also want to keep doing drugs.
Yeah.
You got to pick. It's just like the one example I gave you, the guy who said, if I can't smoke weed, I'm not working here. I have to find another job. And that's not just one person. I've heard that from a lot of people where they're like, well, they don't allow weed, then I can't work here. I'm going to go find somewhere that does. Like, well, you limit your chances, so.
Couple more fact or fiction.
Sure.
And we can rattle through these because I know we've hit on a bunch of them already, but helps with nausea, soothes your stomach.
There's some data to suggest that could be true, especially if it's chemo induced. So we talked about that earlier. So yeah, I think that could be something that could help. Now, whether that's attributable to the THC or the CBD, I'm not sure on that one. I'd have to research that. But
weed, you can OD from it, but you can't die from overdosing on it.
I'm not going to say you can't die, but no one has died yet.
Okay. All right.
No fatalities.
We've already touched on mental health. It relieves if you've got mental health issues, stress, whatever.
The data suggests just the opposite, that it can make it worse. And we know, like I mentioned, in young men, psychosis is much higher. So the data does not support that.
You quit it for a couple days, it resets your system.
No, that's not true because it's fat soluble. So for marijuana, that's why the metabolite hangs around forever. And so depending on how well you metabolize, and we're all different, the levels in your system, may not go away for whoever knows how long. I mean, it could be, I've seen 90 days.
Wow.
So it sticks around. It really does stick around. But the thing that I have seen employers do, which I credit them for this, is that if you have someone who tests positive, you can request the levels be added to a test. But now any medical review officer, that's the person who reviews drug tests before they determine that they're positive, it's not a prescription, whatever. Any medical review officer would tell you that never use the levels. Don't make any kind of determination on a level. Where I challenge that, and I think a lot of doctors challenge that, is because when you're looking at medication management, you want to see levels that are stable if it's the medication they're being provided. But if there's an illicit drug, you want to see that number decreasing. But they would argue that, if you're exercising a lot, or you eat a lot of, if you have a high body fat percentage, there's a lot of things that go into it that can change it. But you should see that number start to decrease in the same person. So like if I'm testing every 3 weeks and I'm saying that I'm not using, marijuana anymore, you should be able to see that number coming down. Okay. And a lot of doctors do that. That will, the ones who are, treating people for using Suboxone or methadone or any of those kind of drugs that are for withdrawal, to help with withdrawal. So they'll want to see the illicit drugs coming down. And so they'll do regular drug tests. So I think that employers who will kind of give employees that chance, they say, okay, 90 days, takes 90 days for some people to get it out of their system. Well, I was an everyday smoker. I'm probably going to be one of those 90-day people. So as, they start to see the levels coming down, they're okay.
Yeah.
As long as they say, hey, if you want to, we'll allow you to do a reset. if you'll agree to not use anymore, and we can see the levels coming down, and you agree to test. So to their credit, I've seen numerous employers do that.
Fact or fiction? Weed helps you sleep better.
Well, I think the data is showing that it will make you go to sleep, but I don't think the data shows that you don't get the restorative sleep, and the brain. I mean, the more and more, like, I guess as I'm getting older, I start looking into. I study longevity all the time now. It seems like I'm always looking at the next thing, like what's getting in a sauna or using different supplements and all this different stuff. I'm big time into longevity stuff, and everything that you study, supplements, everything, nothing is more important than sleep. And it's because that's when your body renews, and it renews in deep sleep and REM sleep. And if you never get there, you're not getting that renewal. And so I think as the data starts to hash that out, that's problematic, I would say.
Fact or fiction? No difference between smoking, vaping, edibles.
There is a difference. The data shows that the actual smoking of the flower might be the worst way, because it's just, you get all the carcinogens and stuff, and you bring the lungs into it. But this dry herb, the vaporizer, seems to be the safest way. And edibles are off the charts for overdose. You just see the people overdosing on those, especially kids too. I mean, the increase is like over 1,000% in kids in Colorado. Crazy.
Different strains offer different benefits.
I'm not sure on that one. You've done more research into that one than I have. I don't know what you're doing, Rich. But it seems like I would say that it's 100% that there are different strains and different potency of it, because some have more THC and less CBD, and by design. Okay. They are there, and that too is something that's changed. Is that you can grow a couple plants at home as long as you put your name on them and all that crazy stuff, and then once the retail stores are available, you're going to be able to keep 2 ounces with you, so you're going to be able to keep a lot. Yeah,
I mean, what I was kind of reading was different cannabinoids, is that the right word? Have different effects. So certain ones are grown with a higher concentration of certain cannabinoids that may or may not affect
cause
you in a different way.
Side effects. Sure.
Maybe.
I mean, if you think about the way that actual medicine works, you have a lot of different medicines in the same class. They all cause different side effects.
Okay, so maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that's off the table, but I know that the potency is really where the rubber meets the road.
We haven't talked about this a lot, but the synthetic marijuana, right? Delta 8, I think, and it's stuff that you can buy legally.
They are putting caps on some of the hemp derived things that you see in the stores. And Delta 8's one of those. And now that they've put, it's like, I think they've lowered it to like 2 milligrams. So they're capping that. Why don't you cap the THC, not just the hemp derived
stuff? Is it
stuff?
safe to assume though that the synthetic stuff is worse for you than the natural?
Gosh, I mean, for me, the biggest, like that Valley trial, I don't know if you've seen that, but that when we had all these people dying from vaping, was because they added this vitamin E into it. Vitamin E acetate killed like 1,000 people, killed a lot of people. And they pretty much nailed it right down to, it's not the marijuana that killed them, it was the vitamin E that was in it. And so it was these cartridges, that people were smoking. And when you look at that, it's like, oh gosh, anything that now commercially that they can manipulate, like I think we need to have some regulation in there, because I mean, we've already seen a bunch of people vitamin E where it wasn't regulated, and that ended up like, I'm sure they thought that was a great idea, but it wasn't, and it started causing all these lung issues. And
so if people are going to partake, better off doing it with stuff
that vaporizer, I guess, is probably the best.
But I mean, something that you buy legally from whether it be a dispensary, whether it's, I mean, I guess it's only medicinal here in Virginia now, but next year, don't buy.
Don't take it as an endorsement for me, but it seems like that's.
But
the
you
best.
know what I'm going. Much better chance of not getting crap in there if you're buying it from a legal dispensary.
Yeah, I mean, as they're making, I think it's a double-edged sword, because now that it becomes commercially available, it should become safer. But you're also seeing now that they're modifying it to where they're dropping CBD and increasing the THC. So the goal is not medicinal. The goal is to get high. Make no mistake. That's what it is.
Fact or fiction, it makes you a better driver.
Only women. That's what a sexist would say, according to Greg Gutfeld.
Yeah, good catch. Good catch.
No. Absolutely not.
I mean, it slows you down. I'm more focused. I'm all these things.
Yeah, I don't think that's proven. I don't think that's proven. I don't think there's any data to suggest
because one of the big things is reaction time, right? Your
Right.
reaction time is a lot slower.
Yeah, it's a lot slower. I mean, I would think that it would make you less.
Which is why you can't drive when you're high.
That's right.
Brian, what's next as far as all this goes? I mean, we've got the legalization coming in Virginia. You've talked about testing. The whole thing. Where does it go from here? Because I think it's pretty hard to imagine that we've gotten to where we are right now with cannabis based on where we were a decade ago.
Yeah, it's wild. I would say that you're going to see acceptance continue to grow. I think when you look at the data on acceptance, I guess 2010, they looked at acceptance among teens. And what was the acceptance? And it was 58% were not accepting. That number's down to 36 now. So you're just going to see that, I think, grow. I think you're going to see more and more acceptance as it becomes more and more widely available. What I would like to think is that you're going to see a reset at some point. I hope that we can get our lawmakers to understand the importance of keeping the potency down and, being able to regulate that part of it. But at some point you'll see a reset to where people did you ever think alcohol would fall out of favor? And now here we are where more people are smoking weed than alcohol. So
the pendulum kind of swings back to the middle.
Yeah, I think so. And that's my hope. But like the cat's out of the bag now. So I don't think we're ever going to see where it goes back. What I will hope is that our ability to test for it improves. I think that as the breathalyzer technology is improved, then that will be a good stopgap measure, I think.
So you want to see better testing. And more regulation.
A little more regulation, that's hard coming out of our mouth.
Especially on the potency part of it.
Yeah, I think just on the potency part, because that's, like I said, with the cat being out of the bag, I think that's where we have to come down on it. And they've already done it with some of the hemp-derived products. And so you're going to see Delta-8 kind of go away, I think. I think with them putting that cap in place, I think maybe that would be the next logical thing, is to be able to cap some of the potency. But you can still get grain alcohol, So yeah. I think about that. And so I am all about like personal responsibility. That's how like my politics are. And so I'd like people be accountable for themselves. But when it comes to the overall impact on our world around us, you do have to have some regulation, to be able to, when you look at the impact on employers and, workers' comp claims, like we talked about, going up double, in 5 years. That's a big deal. So, I would like to see better testing for employers, and a little more regulation. I think that's the next logical step. And I think people just being educated on what's out there. And I really worry about our kids, and because of the brain development that we touched on, because of the overdose potential with edibles and little kids. That worries me. And so I'm hoping that there'll be some better awareness. I guess they supposedly will mark the brownies and different things like that in some of these stores to keep, so that you can teach kids that this is adult brownie. This is not a kid brownie. Don't eat 3 or 4 of them like my daughter ate the whole box of Fiber One bars. She tastes a delicious brownie because you can't taste it.
Right.
So anyway, I think that's next.
Interesting. Well, it's obviously evolved a bunch. It'll be interesting to see, where we go from here. But I appreciate you kind of shedding some light on it, because I know lots of people have questions about their own health, their kids' health, and certainly how to deal with it in the workplace. So appreciate all your help and insight.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it.
Thank you, man.
Yes, sir.